I did. I started experimenting with mushrooms, and a lot of different compounds. And as I did that, all of a sudden it was like my mind was making connections that it had never made before. And it was like in the Matrix when they plug Neo in and all of a sudden he knows martial arts.
Yeah.
I learned how to DJ literally in a day on some mushrooms. I'm not kidding you.
I'm Harmony Williams, and this is Life-Changing Trips. Sometimes it's hard to see the freedom and the beauty that lives behind the weight of everything we carry. But I believe that life is so amazing, and I can't waste another moment. I'm so excited to be here with you for another transformational conversation about experiences and the latest research on plant medicine, meditation, breathwork, and other unconventional modalities, and how they are being used for mental health and expansion. I hope by listening that you will find ways to integrate your peak experiences and epiphanies to open up new levels of possibilities, ingenuity, and fulfillment in business, and deeper, authentic connection and passion in your relationships, and a feeling of purpose, of living fully alive. All content is for informational, entertainment, educational, and harm reduction purposes only. Life-Changing Trips and Harmony Williams and their affiliates and guests are not doctors or mental health professionals or legal advisors. Any information shared is not meant to treat, diagnose, or claim cures for any physical conditions or mental illness. Psychedelics and sacred plant medicines are not for everyone, even when done legally. There are serious contraindications with various health conditions and pharmaceutical medications. Please do your own research and take action to be informed. Remember that you are 100% responsible for your actions and subsequent consequences. The views of the guests are not the views and opinions of Life-Changing Trips. Welcome. Today we get to talk to Trevor, and I loved this interview. It's so fun. We could talk for hours. I introduced him a little at the beginning of the podcast, but I wanted to just let you guys know that we are starting in September a free integration coaching group where I'll be able to share some of the techniques that I've used to integrate, to prepare before and after journeys or microdosing. And we'll get to do some breath work, some meditation and coaching, answer questions, help keep you educated, safe. So if that's something that you're interested in, actually, Jen Hullab is going to do that with me. She's volunteered her time, so it will be free. And she has done lots of retreats, guided lots of retreats. And so she is a great wealth of knowledge to answer questions also. It will start in September. Hop into our Life-Changing Trips group or just DM me is probably the easiest way to make sure you get a link and you get on there for that free group that we're going to be doing and have a lot of fun, meet other people, friends, community that are like-minded people. So hope to see you in September. We are also doing an in-person monthly meetup that will be free in conjunction with the TDA. And I believe the August one will be on the 31st. But if you join that Life-Changing Trips community or DM me, I can let you know when those will be so you can come in St. George. In this episode with Trevor, we get to hear his story a little bit and how he discovered plant medicine. We talk about cannabis, microdosing versus macrodosing, ego dissolution, some of his epiphanies. We'll talk about functional mushrooms, and I tell a little bit of my journey and kind of both of us, how we went from very conservative, don't do drugs, to advocates for these plant teachers. This is episode 1. So if you like this one, head on over and listen to episode 2 that will be coming out next week, where he tells us about his DMT trip, and we get into a little bit deeper of some things, which is super fun. He talks about his business and how it's helped him with time allocation and realize the importance of the people in his life and how precious and short life is. So hope you go see episode 2 next week too. Welcome, Trevor. I am so excited to have you here. I want to introduce you to my guests. Trevor is Emmy award-winning filmmaker and video producer. And he also happens to be my cousin. So I have kind of the inside scoop in getting a little bit of his time from his busy life. And he also is super into plant medicine. And we just got talking and I got to hear a little bit about how it's changed his life. So Trevor, do you want to just tell us a little bit about you? Give us a little intro.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. Dude, what a fun concept. What a fun idea. Like, as soon as we started talking, we just really clicked on this. I think anybody that's had any psychedelic experience or an experience with mushrooms or cannabis or what have you can absolutely relate with other people that have done that. And you get to that subject really quick because it is so life-changing in so many different ways, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like for me, I think that I kind of always knew that I would enjoy like cannabis because of the comedy that I grew up in. And I knew the culture a little bit, right? Of like the stoners and like, smoking weed and tripping out, and all of that kind of stuff. And it was always kind of like cool, but like forbidden,
Okay. I was like, wait, so did you don't even have to answer any of these questions, but did you dabble with this at all when you were a teenager or in that stage when a lot of people do? No, you didn't.
Never.
Okay.
No, in fact, I don't even know where I would have it didn't even cross my mind. My mind. Guilt would have killed me. I wouldn't have been able to do it. You know what I mean? In fact, I had to lose a lot of that way of thinking in order for me to be able to go there because, I also heard about bad trips. Like I heard about people having like anxiety attacks or like, just a panic attack. And I didn't want to be doing something that I thought was going to be like enlightening or good for my health, but then at the same time having to deal with guilt of doing something at the same time and like risking maybe having a really bad time or like maybe God visits me in this trip, and just chastises me and, sends me to hell. And then I'm psycho and I never pull out of it and I'm never the same again. So all the same fears, you know what I mean? But yeah, as soon as I kind of lost that, I was super curious about so many different things, right? But I was never really curious about drugs that would harm me, Luckily, I got introduced to plant medicine, or I allowed myself to be open to it, I guess, to even be aware of it, right? It's almost like it didn't even exist before.
Right.
It's so crazy.
This nebulous concept of something we put on the we wouldn't do. It's scary. It's detrimental. It's bad.
Yeah. I mean, I would hear I remember, certain artists in the 90s, like Billy Corgan and the Smashing Pumpkins saying that LSD was his favorite drug of choice and all of this, but I wouldn't have I don't know what it was, I wouldn't know where to even get it. You know what I mean? And so, but as I got older and as I lost, a lot of that kind of guilt that I associated with it and really just shifted my perspective in how I looked at it and viewing it, more as a medicine, right? And something that could, assist me and actually improve my life, right? I wasn't looking to, at 35 years old, by the way, this is around the time that this happened. I wasn't looking to go out and party too much or experiment. I was an adult with kids, for crying out loud. So it's like, I think that there was a big positive to that, to being a responsible adult and, finding it a little bit later in life, because one thing and one reason why I'm really excited to come on the podcast and talk about this is for educational purposes, because I have seen also a lot of people that, misuse or just because of lack of education, maybe they're in a situation where, there's either peer pressure or they thought it was one thing and it wasn't, and they didn't know to test it, or they didn't know how to test it. They thought they could trust certain people. But I think just, with everything that's going on with fentanyl, and I mean, fentanyl's the big one, right? but also people just taking too much of something or taking the wrong thing. I mean, people don't even realize, it's like, oh, mushrooms, right? But it's like, there's so many different strains of mushrooms, like within the world of just mushrooms alone, and knowing kind of which one vibes with you, that's going to give you the most benefits. That's my big reason why, is just, you know what I mean? We would like to offer our insights, our experience, so that you don't have to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
Because
and I just want people who want to do this they maybe don't even think they want to do this, right? But help open up to the possibilities, the research, the truths about it, and also, like you said, some of the dangers. So and as you were talking about which things to do for what reasons, that kind of thing, but really educational, right? Mm-hmm. And we'll have a disclaimer at the beginning of each episode.
I mean, but to close that loop there, really the reason why I'm excited to like share and be on this podcast and be more open is really for that, is for education. So people that are interested, maybe they don't even know they're interested, right? But it's all about education for me. It's for me, it's helped my life so much, and so many people around me that have also benefited from plant medicine, that if I can just share something that either opens somebody up to it that can benefit from it, or maybe help them see it in a different light. So maybe they're not as judgmental when looking at other people that are using plant medicine. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's all about education for me. And so, okay, so I shared a little bit about like how I was able to like open up to it without getting into like our first experience, right? Because that could rabbit hole, which that should maybe be a different episode. But
yeah, stay tuned.
You have to tell me like what it was for you that finally was like, okay, what is this, or got you interested enough to like look into plant medicine?
Okay. So it really started with, I was not open to any of this. And like you said, it wasn't really on my radar. It was just this lumped into this bad drug. I thought it was like, I thought these plant medicines, these heart openers, like psilocybin, like LSD, MDMA, these type of things were cocaine and heroin. I thought you were just going to be on the street, in the gutter, whatever, this stereotype. So it was just like, no way I would ever even think about that. And my daughter has been sexually abused many years growing up. And that's heartbreaking as a mother to go through that with her and realize this little girl, your precious little baby, that you did all these things, didn't let her go sleep over at friends' houses, all these things to protect her, and I didn't. And so we did finally decide to let her do some SSRIs, some antidepressants, and she did one. Anyway, I don't need to tell the whole story here. The antidepressants weren't working, and she was also doing therapy, and we found a therapist she liked, and that was helping a little, but it was still really bad. The depression, PTSD, those physical responses coming out of nowhere when something triggered it. And I was talking with someone and they said, have you read the book, How to Change Your Mind? And I really recommend the book. There's a lot more to that, but you can start with the Netflix show, right? And so I did. And it showed me so much that I didn't know. The studies, and I started digging in, and I'm like, okay, what's the worst? Once I kind of thought they're using this for mental health, they're using this for depression, they're using these things for PTSD. They're doing these studies like 80% smoking cessation rate. No, that doesn't happen, to help people get off alcohol, get off smoking, all these different things they're using it for. And it was just a new idea to me at that time. And as I started digging in, like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, what are the long-term effects? What are if I'm going to allow this into someone I love's life, I don't want I want to know the consequences, right? It was serious for me. And as I researched and dug in, like you said, Johns Hopkins has a world of different studies that you can look at and outcomes, different things they're trying it on. There's different microdosing studies now, and you can apply to be in one of these clinical trials. And as I looked through this, I was blown away. Just, oh, I didn't know what these were. And so the end of that story, and I may go into detail of that story and others in another episode, is that this was the first time she had felt happiness. And she's like, I didn't feel high. I felt joyful. I felt like myself. I could see beauty in the world. I saw a reason to live. And I mean, just as she's telling me, I'm just bawling, like so grateful, like her countenance changed. She was a different person and had something to live for. And when you've seen someone so depressed, you don't know even how depressed they are when it's been 10 years, right? Until you see them themselves again and their true, authentic selves and how beautiful and bright it was. And it changed my mind. And I was like, hey, maybe there's something here that I want to explore too.
Yeah, you absolutely need to do another episode and dive into that more, because that, I'm sure so many people could relate to that. We live in a state that is very high in depression and anxiety. And the last couple of years hasn't helped anything. Right. So I think a lot of people are quickly turning to medication, right? Because it's like, well, I can trust my doctor, you know what I mean? And not knocking medication when prescribed correctly, right?
Yeah.
And it's absolutely necessary for some people, right? And
it's helped people, definitely.
But if there's a natural option, right? You know what I mean? So for me, I have a lot of back pain, right? I was in a car accident. I have some bulged discs in my lower back. And it's just really hard for me to get relief from that, sleep, all the stuff. And so what I was doing was basically just a Band-Aid that got really nasty after a while because I was just popping Tylenol and ibuprofen. Like that was the easiest thing. That's what I'd always done for pain. And so I ended up like taking 800 milligrams in the morning and at night of each, right? And then sometimes in the daytime, I would take something different, like an Aleve or something, But anyway, I started getting such bad acid reflux, that I went to the doctor, and he ended up telling me that I was basically kicking the crap out of my stomach, by taking
that is scientifically. The studies show, it does. Taking that on a regular basis, prolonged, it's going to eat away your digestive lining, your intestines here. So anyway, I ended up, I was telling this friend of mine who is also a doctor the story, and he lives in Colorado. And we were going to this event and we were talking, and he goes, well, have you tried cannabis? And I'm like, well, I'm not going to smoke pot. Like, sorry. Terrible.
You know what I mean? Like that's off the table kind of thing, Yeah. I had no idea that there were like gummies and CBD and CBG and all of the different terpenes and everything, that goes into it that's available aside from just like rolling a joint and smoking it, like there's so many different ways to ingest and so many different parts, right, of the plant. And so anyway, I was basically prescribed it. Yeah. That kind of like got me thinking, well, okay, that's probably better than what I'm doing to my body.
Yeah.
And I was always curious, like I said, and I had lost that kind of guilt, around that same time, which thank goodness.
Yeah. Guilt is not doing our body any good. Living in a state of stress and guilt.
Yeah. No, I would not recommend.
Or mental health.
No, right? I mean, gosh, that's like an episode in of itself though, Harmony. But anyway, and so that's what it was for me. And ever since I've never had to I've never had to jump on Tylenol or ibuprofen. And the good thing is that as long as I'm ingesting it kind of throughout the week, it's not something that I need, even every single day.
Nice.
I found like if I eat, some, then kind of good for 48, 72 hours as far as like pain goes.
Wow.
You know what I mean? It's not like I'm high for 72 hours. I wish. No, I'm just kidding. But no, but as far as the health benefits and really what I'm looking for there, it's smaller amounts that I'm having to ingest. It lasts longer. It's more natural. I'm not killing myself, which is great. So anyway, but yeah, that was kind of my story. So our other cousin was having horrible insomnia from pain and got addicted to some really harmful things. And the only way she was able to really get out of it was thanks to cannabis, So
incredible. She's agreed to come on, and that's an incredible story.
That one's as big as your story. Mine was just like a little back pain, but and then, what was funny is like, I was so curious about like tripping on mushrooms, I'm not going to lie. Like at that point I was so curious. I was open to anything. I was being responsible about it. I wasn't looking to like kill myself or ruin my life, but I was curious about what the whole buzz was about, know what I mean? The whole 60s,
like
you know what I mean? So so there was that, but then it was after that I experimented with them out of curiosity to like trip out that I was like, oh wow, like I was not expecting this benefit, that benefit, and the other. And then I heard about microdosing and then tried microdosing, and that's a whole different experience with the same compound, and it's crazy how, I mean, we could talk about all of these individually, right? We're like talking about plant medicine as an umbrella in this episode, right? And so I'm just kind of spitting out a few, right? But I mean, even in the cactus, mescaline with peyote, and like all of these plant medicines have been used for centuries and centuries, probably back to the early humans. We've always been utilizing plants, and I think that we've been using them for our health benefits and also for enlightenment, you could say, or connection to yourself, to planet Earth, to God, if whatever that is, you know what I mean? But it's crazy that it took me so long to find it. That's my only kind of, even though like when it finds you, and I think it's perfect timing. You know what I mean? It's always perfect timing. But
that's why I got interested for myself too. I had heard enough stories and researched enough that it was that the thing people kept talking about was this sense of oneness and the connection with other people and this spiritual experience and finding your true authentic self and living each moment in the moment. And the consciousness, when they cleared out, the default network dropped, and somehow the things these people were saying were so profound. They were incredibly profound, brilliant, and just literally like streaming.
I can't agree more. I can't agree more. It was almost like, if you've seen The Matrix, for me anyway, okay. This is when I first started ingesting cannabis, and I'm being so careful with my vocabulary, right? Like, but I mean, there's so many different ways. But I started experimenting with mushrooms, and a lot of different compounds. And as I did that, all of a sudden it was like my mind was making connections that it had never made before. And it was like in The Matrix when they plug Neo in, and all of a sudden he like knows martial arts.
Yeah.
I learned how to DJ literally in a day on some mushrooms. I'm not kidding you. That's a totally different story.
I just talked to a chiropractor on the same note, and he said after his, for like weeks, as he's working on people, he could, the guy that created the DNA strand, that whole thing, did that on LSD, right? He created that on LSD. And this is how he was describing it too. And
we need to add that in the show notes, by the way. We will add, we need to add these links.
Some of these links. So as he's working on people, he was like, oh, I was on fire as a chiropractor because I just knew I could see the insides of their body. I could tell what was wrong, what they needed, so much more. And he's like, and I'm a good chiropractor normally, but it was incredible how
and it's funny that we're jumping here first, right? I guess we should probably talk about the nootropics and the mood enhancement and all that.
There was some microdosing.
It's the most interesting though, right? Because it's like, you do like all of a sudden, like you learn quicker. It's very, very noticeable that there are certain synapses happening, like new connections being made in your brain. Like that's very, very obvious. You experience a completely different state of mind, which you don't know what that means if you've only experienced one state of mind. But to know that there's other states of mind, for me anyway, just opened up just so many different possibilities for my psychological health. And it also helped me make sense of meditation because it was actually through plant medicine guided me to meditation actually.
Oh, mine was the opposite. I meditated every single day in the year 2020, but I had been getting into meditation.
Oh, I thought it was all bullshit.
And that led me to, because I'd heard, you can get to these states in meditation. And I was just meditating just to like keep my cool with my kids and not have anxiety, right? That's why I was meditating. And then as I got into it a little more, and they're like, no, good or not good meditators, some meditators and yogis, right, get to this state of total, it's a totally, like you said, a totally different state. I don't even know what you want to call it. Bliss, beingness, ego dissolution. I don't know. And then I was asking someone that I knew had led some retreats. And I said, why do you need this substance or this mushroom or whatever this is to get to this state? Why can't I just do it naturally? And she's like, yeah, go for it. It might take you 20 years and maybe you will get there and maybe you won't. And this is just something God's put on this earth that's a little pushes you into that state, or you can,
you know what? I couldn't agree more. It's like how do I put it? It's a window into where the path of meditation will lead you, but it is not a shortcut. It is not a shortcut because you can't get there because you'll be in it for maybe 3 or 4 hours, but guess what? When it's done, you're coming back to exactly where you started. Yeah. And so it's almost like somebody like the Wizard of Oz, just kind of like rips back the curtain so you can see, what I mean? What living in the moment and feel what living in the moment actually feels like, you know what I mean? And what the feeling of oneness actually feels like. And I'm not assuming that if you're listening to this, you haven't had that experience, right? But I had not, and I didn't understand Eastern philosophy. I think when you grow up in the West, especially before the internet, it was pretty foreign, and so just the idea that I could like think so differently just based on me plucking a mushroom out of nature was just mind-blowing to me. But I got to get back to something real quick because Paul Stamets said, and I already quoted Paul Stamets earlier, but I don't think we were recording, because he said that he believes that mycelium is the neurological network of nature. If you've never read any of Paul Stamets' work, I would highly recommend it. He has an incredible book called Mycelium Running, which is amazing. But he said that I see the mycelium as the Earth's natural internet. A consciousness with which we might be able to communicate. And I cannot agree more. It's like it's like you're tapping into this pure intelligence or knowledge. I've done such, and this was, again, back to learning and education, right? This was a learning moment, but I did some like a high quantity of psychedelics once to the point where I felt like I had tapped into database of knowledge, of all human knowledge. And I could like ask any question and it would instantly just come to my mind and everything made sense. And it was, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe there's actually like a name for that. I believe like the Akashic records.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like you can tap into the Akashic records, which is basically like your subconscious memory bank that's storing thoughts of your ancestors, that also stores like illogical fears and phobias. You don't know why, but they're just built in there. And so you can access them through things like meditation or just a shit ton of mushrooms. But no, I think maybe like we could dive into what are some of the benefits of like plant medicine in general, right? I mean, I think we're talking about cannabis and mushrooms today for the most part, right?
Yeah.
But I mean,
and as we do that, I wanted the benefits of some of these plant medicines. And I wanted to just, I don't know if this will be too disjointed, but where I learned enough to get rid of that guilt or that fear. And the information I could study and learn and look at the research and hear the stories. And I got to a point where I knew in my heart that there was absolutely nothing wrong with this, especially the way I was using it. Right.
Right.
And even if someone's using some substance, food or alcohol or drugs or whatever to numb,
right,
then I'm still not going to shame them. We can help them with whatever the underlying problem is, but I'm not going to shame that substance anyway. But I had gotten to a point in this where there was no guilt. And it's not just because I said, I don't give a crap. It was because I knew 100% in my heart that it was good and that it was beneficial and that it was from God and it connected me to God, the universe, source, whatever someone might call it, Allah. I don't care what you call it. God probably does not care what you call it. And there's no guilt there. There's no way to go back and say, I don't know. I just wanted to bring that point. It's not just
it's like, you know,
I heard giving a crap
that drugs aren't bad. It's our relationship to them that can be unhealthy. Right. And so, yeah, I think that like realizing that you're an adult, you've done your research, you see the benefits, it's natural. It's in fact, you could say wise.
Yeah.
For your longevity.
Right.
And for your health, right? Like to consume them. So anyway, I mean, like for me, the biggest things, and I want you to chime in after I throw out like the obvious ones, right? Because you might know a little bit more of the science of this, but I do know enough from reading about nootropics and mushrooms, right, to know that they definitely have an impact on mood enhancement, problem solving, and anxiety / depression, right? So the mood enhancement and the anxiety and depression are one. Sorry, the third one was creativity. Sorry.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So for me, I looked at all three of those and I was like, yes, please, yes, please, yes, please. Like, you know, and what I've seen anyway is like, yes, of course, if you're going to throw 3 grams in a peanut butter sandwich and, you know, and down that, you'll have some mood enhancement. You know what I mean? It might feel like a roller coaster depending on where you're at in life.
Yeah.
You know, we could talk about set and setting a little bit, but you know, you're going to have some really high highs and really low lows, maybe over a 6-hour period of time. That would be interesting too, to do an episode where we talk about like what to expect when having, you know, your first trip or something, you know what I mean?
Yes.
But you can have a more balanced mood enhancement that's overall just, I feel like it's positive and you won't be brought to heaven and then down to hell maybe in the same few hours, is with microdosing. Like microdosing for me, you don't see anything. You don't feel any different.
Yeah.
I actually when I was looking into it, I read that it was good to actually take it at night. And then you just feel the benefits as you wake up in the morning and throughout the day. And then, and then whether you're taking it every other day or every 2 days or whatever, you know what I mean? But yeah, so I tried that. And for me, what I noticed on that is my problem solving skills were on point.
Really?
During those few weeks that I was doing it. Yeah.
I believe that.
And so that was interesting, you know what I mean? But I know that it does so much more, than that. But I mean, those for me anyway, were like the top 3 that I have both experienced and that kind of drew me to trying mushrooms as well.
Yeah. For the microdosing, I felt same. It's a subperceptual dose, right? You're doing a tiny 1/10 of what a large dose would be or a large trip would be for whatever substance. And so it does scientifically improve your vision. And for me, it's like HD and everything seems more beautiful. And I also notice a little bit I'm like ADHD and piles don't bother. Like I don't notice them or they're just a thing, and junk doesn't, I don't know, I can collect junk, and I notice those things, and I would like my surroundings to be calm and peaceful and organized more. Right. And so I go and I organize things and I make my home a nice place. And for connection, all of these things, connection with other people and family members has been one of the hugest things. So just microdosing to be able to let go of a resentment I've been holding towards someone, and to just be able to feel and see them and be there with them and slow down a little and connect emotionally with them and their heart and their soul and just be in that moment. So connection has been huge. It drops a little bit of my defenses. A mentor of mine said, take a look at whenever you want to try and defend yourself. That's like a little red flag of something you can work on, something that you're not believing about yourself because you feel like you need to defend it, right? If someone says, well, you're a purple alien, you're like, whatever. You don't feel like you need to defend that, right? But if someone says I'm a bad mom, then I feel like I need to defend it because I'm worried about being a bad mom, right? So all those defenses, if my kid or my husband or something says something that I might normally be defensive about, they're just lowered just a little bit. My heart's opened just a little bit. Gosh.
Yeah, I know.
Can connect with them.
It's crazy. It's like, I've noticed that like usually there's this little me inside that just like, boom, that like I can't even control, you know what I mean? That's so reactionary. But lately, over the last few years, as I've been microdosing and consuming, I've just been like, as something arises, it's like I'm able to have that moment, even if it's just a split second where I'm able to just like ask the question, okay, how do I respond? Or, and it's weird because like I've noticed, especially as of late, which is strange, something will happen and then my body doesn't physically react like I'm used to it. Like the rush of anxiety or like I should care, it's gone, for at least for a moment, you know what I mean? Where I'm just like, okay, I'm able to like actually like react logically, conscientiously, and I don't let little things throw my day off. So I agree. I've noticed that same thing. Did you know, I was reading about how many different mushrooms there are. Okay. This is just a little fun fact. So there's like 14,000, but there's species. There's 2,000 that we can eat. Okay. Of the mushrooms. But of those, there's only 6 that have no tropics in them. And lion's mane is one of them. And so lion's mane would be a good, something to maybe include in your diet if you're looking for like a mood enhancer.
Yeah. They're doing, I think lion's mane is one that I want to say it's Paul Stamets, but I could be wrong. They're doing studies on for Alzheimer's. Yeah.
Wow.
His mom was one of 2 people who, in this large group of basically cancer, and like she had all these different things. She had a tumor, and they were basically death sentence people. And along with the drug that he had said, don't do this one, get in this trial. This one looks the best. She was also taking the lion's mane. And anyway, fascinating wormholes we could go down now. But I think all of those nootropics and different
Okay, so I actually just looked up while you were, I'm going to just throw this in there just because while you were saying that last one, I was like, what is it about the learning and memory, right, with these mushrooms? And so chaga, the CHAGA, it's a species of mushroom. Mm-hmm. It's one of the 6 nootropic rich mushrooms, I guess. Anyway, it says that it demonstrated in animal studies as an acetylcholinesterase, I cannot say the name, but some sort of compound inhibitor which boosts acetylcholine. Have you ever heard of that? Acetylcholine.
I learned about it in personal training certificate I did.
So, and that enhances learning and memory.
Oh.
So that makes sense.
Cool.
Maybe. Obviously, there's always a kind of a chemical explanation for what's happening, right? Mm-hmm. When we're taking these things, but it's super cool to like dive into the studies and the science behind it and actually see what's happening, because up to this point, it's just been like, I've experienced, but that's just anecdotal. That's like my experience and the people around me, but to actually like dive into it and see why, I guess, is really cool. You know what I mean? So I think it'll be fun as we go through this because we'll kind of be learning it together as we share experiences. There's going to be education that we're sharing, but also we're going to be learning like real time because this subject is just so deep, so deep. So anyway, but yeah, so man, that's quite a lot. And I think that's just off of mushrooms. Like if you looked into cannabis, I
already had a cannabis expert interview, which is super fun too. So
because now you're talking about like insomnia, mm-hmm. You're talking about people that have that can't eat, right? It gives people appetite. It helps with anxiety. Pretty much any ailment you could kind of think of, helps with
seizures. So there's cannabis and CBN with seizures. There's lots of things they're looking into and doing.
And the cool thing now is that and I guess we maybe should have mentioned this like way early on, is nothing that we're talking about in any of these episodes is even remotely a potential risk on your life.
Right.
Like you cannot, it's physically impossible for you to overdose on cannabis or on mushrooms.
And so if you just on Advil
if you took if you ate let's say I don't know, 5 buckets worth somehow of mushrooms.
Oh man, I don't know how you could get that down.
You would have like the craziest day of your life. Wouldn't be good, but you would survive it.
Probably a bad trip, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm guessing. Yeah, we're not advocating for that. But that was comforting for me to know, you know what I mean? That no one has ever died because of cannabis or because of, any of these plant medicines that we're talking about. And so it's all about benefit. It's all about, how you can, better your life and live the greatest version of you, right?
Right. So. Yeah. And there are contraindications, and I'll have a disclaimer at the beginning of every episode.
Right.
But there are just a few things, a few medications that you don't want to be taking it with. If you have heart problems, you probably don't want to be doing huge doses of something that makes your heart race, right?
Right.
Which several of these things do, not cannabis. But I wanted to point out real fast too, on the microdosing we're talking about, how amazing microdosing is. And it really feels like a totally different substance, a totally different medicine than a large dose. And we have these huge epiphanies. We went straight there because it's so interesting to talk about. I could talk about this with people all day long. And that's why, part of why this is so fun for me. But we have these epiphanies. We have these life-changing experiences. We realize things. We have these peak states. And then we're using, it's not something like you want to do every day or every week, or, it's just, you're not, even people who love it and are proponents of it, they're not out there doing this all the time. But taking those lessons, integrating them into your life and using, and I wanted to ask you, I know some of the things that that I've used would be meditation to integrate this into, like, I want to become a better person. I want to live on this higher wavelength where I am present in my life and I'm feeling things deeply. So meditation has been one, yoga has been helpful, microdosing has been helpful, and just being very intentional about maybe journaling or who or what I want to be, getting creative, these different types of things. But how have you kept those huge epiphanies and those big, amazing life-changing experiences that it's like anything with time, it fades. Luckily, with our terrible experience, time fades them a little bit, right? But they're still, because they're so emotional, they're still really strong. And same with this, because your emotions are so involved, these good life-changing experiences are stronger, they stay stronger, but they do still fade a little bit. Or you kind of have to figure out, well, yeah, I get this now, but how do I live in this world? We're all connected. We're all one. And how do I live in this world right now?
So, oh my gosh, that's such a loaded question, right? Because it's like, I've had so many epiphanies, so many, like, wow, I felt like I was a prophet.
You are a prophet. We all have
I am
that
a prophet. Thank you. Thank you.
We all have that connection,
I'm not a
that direct line to
self-appointed
God.
prophet. Yeah. Okay. Great. Real fast, I was thinking about the fact that we are able to have an outlet and share our experiences without, being tied to the science part of things so much on this. We are brushing over things today, and just we are not experts in the matter. But what I love about the concept of this podcast is that we will have several experts on the podcast that do know exactly, all of these details. So when it's me and Harmony talking, it's basically two average people trying, just like exploring this ourselves. We're still fairly new to it, ourselves. And so you're kind of like, I think it's cool because there's two different types of minds that are going to be kind of on display here. It's going to be ours, which is kind of like the newbie, right? Or kind of, at least we've experimented with it enough, to be like, hey, check this out. But then also, the great minds that we have planned to have on the podcast. So I just want to say that because, as we're jumping into these different things, I think that it's probably more interesting for when we to talk about these kind of things, right? Like the experiences that we've had, because it's what we can speak to best, But for me, like I've had some really deep experiences to the point where I felt like I didn't trust the universe before. And then after the trip, I did. And that,
what do you mean by trust the universe?
The universe brought me into this world and it'll take me out and it's all natural. It helped me with how I viewed death, I guess.
Yeah. And that's another benefit we forgot to mention. That's huge. People struggling with life sentence diseases or cancer or things like that, being able to be at peace with that and understand and live a quality of life rather than just live in fear until they die.
Right.
Thanks so much for subscribing and leaving a review. Come come join our amazing free community, Life Changing Trips. There's a link in the description.